Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuel. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, in a few hours' time, we will know the results of two state elections in Germany. And now these elections are being watched rather closely. They're in the eastern part of Germany, one in Saxony and one in Thuringia. And everyone is expecting the Alternative für Deutschland Party, which we've talked about quite a lot over the years here at the Gaggle, to do rather well. The AfD is expected to win in Thuringia, but in Saxony, they're running the Christian Democrats very close. So it they could still win that, but as the polls have the Christian Democrats beating them off by 2%. So,
but coming in second place.
Coming in second place. So that's a very big deal.
That's a win.
That's a win. And when we're talking about gaining 30% of the vote, which is a huge chunk of the vote, also expected to do well will be the Sarah Wagenknecht's party, the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht. So
if she comes in third,
exactly,
the world historic.
That's right. The three members of the traffic light coalition are expected to absolutely get wiped out. They may not even reach the 5% threshold.
Okay, well, just before we get there, how do you think the Greens are going to do, George? What do you think we're going to be talking about tomorrow? You think green is going to be the dominant color that we're going to be talking
I don't think green is going to be the dominant color. I think, anything but green tomorrow. Now, there's a couple of interesting aspects to this, which, I mean, first of all, after so many years from World War II, German politics is starting to get interesting. I mean, we have this really, really boring
That's
decade.
good and that's bad. Okay.
That's true. That's true. The problem is that these establishment parties have been so terrible, and they've done so little to help the Germans and the German economy, German self-esteem, German industry, all the ingredients that make for a happy, prosperous Germany. And
remember Deutschland. What was it? It was what was the currency? It was
the D-Mark. The
D-Mark nationalism. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah. The D-Mark, exactly. It was so strong that they constantly had to revalue it. Normally you kind of devalue, but they had to revalue it because everyone was getting cleaned out by the Germans, so they had to actually keep raising the value. Otherwise, German industry would just be wiping.
Well, and what happened was, at the end of the day, and well into this century, is that if you look who had where were the toasters produced that people used in Bulgaria? Germany. Where were the toasters from in Greece? Germany. Ovens in Poland, from Germany. Not from France, not from Italy. Right. From Germany. Exactly. This is the point that the entire Germany was able to suck it all in, which is of course the aim of German industry for the entire 20th century. It just had a few bumps in the road. Okay.
Well, that's the thing, but because the Germans were such an advanced party in so many different areas, particularly pharmaceuticals, that they dominated chemicals. They dominated chemicals. Then, of course, the auto industry as well became very, very popular. Still very dominant worldwide in the auto industry. So this is the German strength. Now that it worked for a while, and so they had this very boring politics. Christian Democrats ruled for a few years with their partner, the Free Democrats. Then they make way for the Social Democrats. They rule for a few years also with the Free Democrats. And so it went on.
It was kind of like, just different beer brands, I mean, it was the same drink, everyone. It just,
well, it was, but no one really worried because it works. The formula works. So, why, if it ain't broke, why fix it? But clearly it's not working. in Germany anymore. And it's been clear now, at least since the rise of the AfD, which is actually quite recent. I think it's only just a little more than 10 years since it emerged on the scene. That the German political system has been completely upended, and now with this party of Sarah Wagenknecht, it's clearly that something very important is going on in Germany, and particularly a kind of a populism of the left and a populism of the right. And as we discussed when we talked about Sarah Wagenknecht a few days ago, there's a meeting ground between populist left and populist right. Exactly, that's the whole horseshoe theory, which is they obviously both subscribe to social conservatism. They both subscribe to a foreign policy that is, basically you could say peace policy. Basically, Germany should not be at war.
And immigration.
And immigration, exactly. And so just want to show you a few things about the coverage, because the coverage is clearly getting very, very anxious in
I
the
hope we're going to see
media.
Politico, George, our favorite.
Yes. How did you guess?
Of course we're going to see Politico.
But in this case, it's not inappropriate, because Politico is owned by Axel Springer, who's the kind of
George and I don't consult beforehand, okay?
No.
So that's not like an inside joke, okay?
And look at this headline. It's in Politico today. Putin's next coup. You could have written this headline. Let me think. What headline should I write today about this upcoming election in Germany? Putin. It's all about Putin. Elections in 3 East German states are likely to usher in Russia-friendly parties, giving the Kremlin a foothold once again. A foothold once again. I love the once again. I mean, I guess the once again is
that the DDR?
I think it must be the DDR. I mean, otherwise I don't get it.
I don't get it if it's not the DDR.
It must be the DDR.
But everybody, the DDR was a separate country. But anyway.
Yes.
And Putin wasn't in power when the DDR.
Exactly, wasn't in power. I mean, they go on endlessly. He was then in the KGB, but he was a very junior officer. I mean, this was 1989. I mean, it's hard to remember. This is now 35 years ago. So it's a long, long time ago. It didn't really matter what he thought in 1989.
Nobody cared what he thought about it.
Exactly, that's right. So then he goes on. Vladimir Putin may be smarting over Ukraine's surprise incursion into Russia's Kursk region this month, but this weekend he's likely to be celebrating territorial gains farther west.
Territorial gains.
In Germany,
this is desperation.
George. It really is. It really is. That's right. But it's a particular kind of genre of journalism. Well, we don't know what to write, so why don't we just write about Putin? It's like, I'm out of ideas, so why don't we just sort of say Putin's very happy today? Why? I don't know. Well, everything's going in Putin's direction. I mean, then so great. We've got an article.
Yeah, Putin derangement syndrome.
It is
reliable, very reliable.
Exactly. Russia-friendly parties across 3 eastern German states, Brandenburg, Saxony, and Thuringia, are poised to score substantial gains in regional elections in September, 2 of which are set for Sunday. Now, again, they're always saying this Russia-friendly. They always have, again, there's no particularly friendly with Russia. It's like when they say Orban, Russia's best friend in Europe. Again, however many times he repeats, I'm no friend of Russia. I don't particularly like Russia. None of my supporters like Russia. It doesn't matter. They're going to keep saying, is it Russia friendly? The pro-Russian, now we've got the pro-Russian alternative for Germany has a strong chance of finishing first in all 3 states, with the recently formed leftist Sarah Wagenknecht's alliance surging. Moscow stands to re-establish a strong foothold across a broad swathe of the former East Germany, a region it dominated for decades during the Cold War. And as you said,
it wasn't a region, it was a country.
It was a country. Yeah, exactly. It was a country, and keep in mind, it was also recognized People
Yes,
forget that starting in the 1970s, almost all countries in the world recognized East Germany as a state. Even West Germany didn't actually formally recognize it, but they did have kind of de facto diplomatic relations. They met regularly, the Chancellor of West Germany and the East German leader met regularly, discussed all kinds of issues. So it wasn't quite at the level of state-to-state relations, but nonetheless,
and
it was
also
recognized as an independent state.
and it's one of these kind of gray areas. Okay, there wasn't formal recognition, but there was a recognition of legitimacy, and so and that's the way you move forward when you have an impasse like that, and plus, for both East Germany, for the DDR and West Germany, it was like something that will be resolved in the future.
Yep.
Okay, not in the meantime. In the meantime,
we can discuss economic relations, and that was a very big deal in economic
people to people relations.
Yeah, people, exactly, and people to people relations. Yeah. And then all told, the Moscow-friendly parties, which straddle
Moscow-friendly, maybe they're critiques of the status quo parties.
Right. And that's the point. And that, that both of these, both the Alternative for Deutschland and the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, they are united in the idea that this is absolutely contrary to Germany's interests to be in a war with Russia. That has nothing to do with Moscow friendly. They're not friendly to Moscow. It's about that this is an absolute disaster for Germany to be going down this path, and that it needs to be brought to an end immediately. And clearly, a lot of people in Germany think that. I mean, this isn't just some minority. They want to present, oh, this is some minority taste. No, it's actually it's a very significant
also,
Germany.
The author or authors of this piece, they kind of let the cat out of the bag. How did this article start, George? The incursion into the Kursk region.
Right.
Okay, that means a lot to Russians today in 2024. You know what, George? It means a lot to Germans in 2024 too.
That's right. So which straddle the far right and left of the political spectrum are expected to capture at least 50% of the vote across the regions. In one state, Thuringia, the parties are forecast to fetch as much as 65%, with the AFD finishing first on 30%. So that's kind of pretty decent performance. Though not all of the parties are as overtly pro-Russian as the AFD, they have in common two narratives pushed by the far right: that NATO shares the blame for the war in Ukraine, and that a peaceful solution would have been possible if only the West was serious about diplomacy.
Well, those are two narratives.
Two reasonable arguments.
I mean, these has traction because they are backed up by empirical facts.
Exactly.
This is not an ideological push, the way the world should be, the way the world we'd like it to be. The fact of the matter is these two narratives are based in facts that are knowable and are reasonable.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why when they say this is pro-Russian, there's nothing pro-Russian about this. They're not saying, well, I really like Russia. I really like the, the Russian language, Russian culture. I love the Russian form of government. They're not saying any of that. They're just saying that this war is a really bad idea. It should never have happened, and that a peaceful solution was possible very early on. Germany's mainstream governing parties at the national level, the Social Democrats, the Greens, and Free Democrats, have been relegated to also-ran status, with polls forecasting a cumulative result of about 12% in Saxony and Thuringia. 12%.
Well grin from ear to ear. Oh, God, I can't think of three political parties that deserve this most. Okay.
Right. No, that's right. And then they say 27% in Brandenburg. Keep in mind, Brandenburg, that's Berlin. Berlin has always been the Social Democrat stronghold. That, it's famous for being the stronghold of the Social Democrats. So 27% in Brandenburg is an absolute calamity, total humiliation for the Social Democrats. Even when including Germany's largest centrist force, the conservative Christian Democrats, the combined polling of the mainstream parties doesn't exceed 50%. That's the mainstream. The entire mainstream doesn't exceed 50%. That's an extraordinary decline for the centrist parties that have shaped Eastern Germany's political life since reunification. In the early 1990s, West German establishment forces effectively colonized the East, dispatching their own political veterans to run Saxony and other states. Even today, more than 40% of the top-tier political class in Germany's eastern states hail from the West. This is very important to remember because, the reunification was pressed by Helmut Kohl. And so that's why the Christian Democrats did actually extremely well in the elections immediately after the reunification, because they associated it with Helmut Kohl. And that's why this rejection of the Christian Democrats it hurts so much, because that's it. They've lost their standing in the East. And then here we have, none of these articles, which talk about Putin, actually address some of the issues that maybe people are concerned about in Germany. So there was recently, actually a few days ago, the stabbing by some Islamists from Syria in Solingen, at a fair celebrating diversity. Imagine you have a fair celebrating diversity, and then some crazy guy stabs three people who are there, three liberal Germans who care deeply about diversity. Coalition Germany to harden weapons laws and asylum rules after Solingen stabbing. Coalition government hopes tough action will prevent far-right victories in the forthcoming state elections. So that's the only thing they're concerned about. The far right is going to exploit this.
Germany has some pretty hardcore weapons laws on the books. I don't know what the point of this article is. Okay. It's not addressing why the stabbing came about. Okay.
Right. Exactly. And so Germany's fractious coalition government has announced a hard-fought compromise on changes to weapons laws and asylum rules designed to prevent Islamist attacks, such as last Friday's mass stabbing that left 3 people dead.
So they're not going to address immigration.
No, they basically say asylum rules. They're just panicking. I mean, again, as with in other countries, they don't think that this is just an outrage. They're just worried about the far right. The far right is going to exploit this.
Yeah, but George, asylum rules is when you get there. Immigration laws to make sure people don't get there. Exactly. That's why
yeah, I agree. Absolutely. 3 days before key state elections, but in which each of the ruling parties risk heavy losses to the far right, government ministers said the knife rampage, allegedly by a Syrian asylum seeker at a street festival in the western city of Solingen, had exposed critical weaknesses in the country's immigration and security policy.
You needed that to happen to realize that?
That's right.
Are they serious?
Yeah. And again, this is, on top of many previous incidents. So it's not like, oh, this just came out of the blue and it's just a freak of nature. And this is, there've been any number of stabbings, attacks on people, kind of mass kind of sexual assault on German women, which is why these things just explode. The public anger explodes over this. The measures call for the swifter deportation of refused asylum seekers. Swifter deportation. But that's the whole point. They refuse, and then they just continue to stay in the country. I mean, it doesn't matter that you go through the whole lengthy appellate process, and then it's finally rejected, but you still stay. No one actually enforces the deportation order.
Yeah, come by our office in the morning, okay?
Yeah, okay, sure, will do. Yeah. So measure called for swifter deportation of refused asylum seekers and the removal of financial benefits for those who have already been registered in another EU member country. So that's nice. So you get you registered some other EU member country, but you get your financial benefits in Germany, because the German benefits are probably a lot more generous than some. So if you register, I don't know, in Slovenia, you know, your best bet is to get your benefits in Germany.
I guess that kind of gives a new definition to welfare queen.
Yes, welfare shopping. In a policy mass market tabloid Bild called Bed, Bread, and Soap, referring to the bare minimum provisions that will be accorded. Doesn't sound like, you know, it'll be bare minimum. So bed, bread, and soap. And then it says, the suspect in Zolingen, who allegedly killed 3 and injured 8, had been due to be returned to Bulgaria last year, but was not at his shelter when he was about to be picked up.
Oh, yeah. The honor system really works, doesn't it? Okay.
Yes, somebody called him. We'll be right down to pick you up to take you to Bulgaria. Right? Okay, I'll be here. Lucky Bulgaria. You know, what have they done to deserve, you know, this person dumped on them? Asylum seekers will also be barred from taking holidays in their countries of origin. The justice minister, so apparently asylum seekers then take holidays in their countries of origin. This applies incidentally to Ukrainians. Ukrainians come, collect their welfare, and then they go back, see their parents and their friends in Ukraine, then come back, keep collecting their welfare checks. So taking their holidays. The justice minister, Marco Buschmann, of the center-right Free Democrats, said this stood in clear contradiction to the claim their home countries are not safe. Huh. These people are really, they're on the ball.
This is so embarrassing. I mean, yeah. I mean, what is the caliber of justice ministers in Germany?
Not very high.
Not very high, apparently.
No. I mean, basically, all they have in their minds is, well, we have to stop the far right, but they don't have any other ideas. You know, they're not at all concerned about, you know, how do we improve the lives of Germans? You know, they just, you know, they're full of this absolute nonsense in their heads of globalism and all the rubbish that they pick up. And then suddenly something comes along that disturbs their peace, like, you know, the alternative for Deutschland, and then they start running around trying to figure out, what are we going to do? We're going to do something. Only in rare cases would such travel be allowed, such as a family funeral. But there is a problem.
No. Either you're an asylum seeker or you're not.
Exactly.
Okay. If you want to go to your funeral, you're no longer an asylum seeker, and don't apply again. We got your number. We don't want to see you again. It's either an asylum seeker or not. You're
absolutely right. Exactly. You can't just say you absolutely don't have a family funeral. It's like, it's the same with when you're in a witness protection program, like the police give you a witness protection program. That's it. You're in the program. You can't go back to your mother's funeral or anything like that. You've cut yourself off completely, because if you're seeking asylum, that means you face the threat of death, you know, if you go back. So you can't do it. The penalty for violations would be the loss of asylum status. But then you can also appeal. I imagine you can appeal your loss of asylum status, and then during the appeal, you retain your asylum status. So, you know, so you don't really lose anything. Buschmann said tens of thousands of asylum seekers in Germany could not be sent home or to the EU country where they were registered, simply because they could not be located at the time of scheduled deportation.
And this is, you're going to blame this on the far right?
But can you imagine, you're basically saying you've completely lost control of the situation. You are the justice minister, and you're saying, well, tens of thousands of asylum seekers in Germany cannot be sent home or to the EU country where they were registered, which is where they're supposed to be. I mean, if that's where you're registered, you're supposed to be in that country. You're not supposed to be in Germany, simply because they could not be located at the time of scheduled deportation. So what exactly do you do here? You're the justice minister, And they basically, these people are just making a laughing stock out of you, saying, well, yeah, I mean, I've got other things to do. I'm having an omelet at the local calf. So I'm not here when the deportation officers arrive.
Well, I mean, what is it? I wasn't here because I was in another EU country picking up my benefits. I'm sorry I was late. Okay, I had to take a taxi, by the way. Taking the train. Not they didn't walk. They didn't take a horse.
No,
Okay, and I like it. Omelet with caviar, and
that's right. That's right. Noting the charged atmosphere around migration and security issues since last week's attack, Anya Hajduk, a minister in the economy ministry representing the Greens at the news conference, said the coalition wanted to focus on integrating foreign citizens and preventing extremism. Well, good luck with that. I mean, you've been doing a magnificent job with that.
I very rarely invoke the words of Angela Merkel because it's not warranted. But she did say that famous speech. I don't know. I think it was something like 2012 or
something like 2012, 2014.
Multiculturalism has failed. Yeah, you're right, Angela.
Right.
You're right.
But Merkel said many things, and then she just went back on them. I mean, it's like there was never any consistency in anything that she said. Yeah, she said that, and then she continued pursuing the multiculturalism, and then in 2015 she just threw open the doors of Germany to migrants. Hajduk said the government's internal debate had been, quote, guided by the principle that the basic right to asylum in our country must be protected. It was guided by that.
Yeah, but I mean, can there be a caveat here? Has been, quote, guided by the principle that the basic right of asylum in our country must be protected, while at the same time recognizing the needs of the citizens
of your own country,
or locally born, whatever the term you want to use. I mean, can you at least balance that?
No, they never do. I mean, that's right, and that's when Annalena Baerbock famously said that I'm not really interested in what the German people think. I'm only interested in Ukraine. She was just letting the cat out of the bag. Basically, that's the way the Greens think. We're not interested in what ordinary Germans think. They have as much contempt for them as kind of their equivalent in the United States or in the UK for their own people. I mean, what do they matter? They're the stupid.
How do you say German deplorables in German?
I'm not sure. There are probably some very graphic expression.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't sound nice.
No, I don't think it does. She said it was important to push back against the general suspicion against people due to their background. But you see that the problem with that is that, most of the crimes, particularly the sexual crimes, are being committed by migrants. So when you say, oh, we have to push back, but the numbers are so stark that most of these crimes, and particularly these sexual crimes or sexually violent crimes, are committed by migrants. That's why people are very upset about it. So to say, well, just because of their background, yeah, but there's there seems to be a very neat correlation between migrants and crimes. But she said this horrible attack showed us that it is crucial to take action to bolster security. And particularly as it's, just a few days before this election.
After how many millions and millions and millions of people have entered the country, right, claiming asylum, we must take action.
That's it. We must take action. It is time to act. And then, where are we? So now we have Chancellor Scholz, our friend Sergeant Scholz, has said that it is time to start deporting Afghan nationals. Germany deports, again, 2 days before an election, Germany deports Afghan nationals for the first time since 2021 as key state elections loom.
Well, I can see those 28 people, the most unlucky Afghans. 2 days before an election. They call my number. Why?
Germany has deported Afghan nationals today back to their home country for the first time since August 2021, when the Taliban returned to power. 28 people were deported. Stefan Hebestreit, the German government spokesperson, described the Afghan nationals as convicted criminals. The deportations came a week after a deadly knife attack in Solingen, where the suspect is a Syrian citizen who had applied for asylum and reportedly disappeared and avoided deportation. Germany does not have diplomatic relations with the Taliban. The move to resume the return of Afghans comes ahead of closely watched elections on Sunday in Saxony and Thuringia. I assume that what happened, Germany offered them money for the Taliban, because otherwise the Taliban wouldn't take them. I mean, for the Taliban to take them back, if that's what happened, it seems that that's what happened. They said, okay, fine, we'll take the 28. Germany had to pay them a bribe. Otherwise, most governments will say, well, we don't want them. What do we want these criminals for? We got enough criminals of our own. And so the governments usually say no. So the only way they would say yes is if you pay them a hefty bribe. And that's how Germany always operates. I mean, like with Erdogan, Erdogan, threatens to unleash 3 million migrants on Europe unless Germany coughs up some money. So, that's how they operate. The firewall against the German far right is crumbling. By entrenching itself in small towns, alternative for Germany is winning over swathes of the country. So again, this is
really interesting how they always use these war metaphors, entrenching themselves,
That's right.
It's like they have trenches now.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
The language just tells you everything about their whole world view.
That's
okay.
Right. That's right. And the wall is crumbling. So the aggression from the outside. Nearly 35 years after the Berlin Wall, a jagged political schism runs through the country, tracing the former border between East and West Germany. On the east side of the divide, the AfD is surging despite its growing radicalism and persistent warnings from mainstream leaders that it is an extremist, even Nazi party. They always have to put this in the Nazi party. And then so they're doing well. And the surge in support for the AfD comes despite the fact that state-level domestic intelligence authorities have classified the local branches of the party in both Saxony and Thuringia as extremist organizations aiming to undermine German democracy. And again, you wonder, why are domestic intelligence authorities getting involved in domestic political elections?
Well, I mean, I would think that nominally speaking, the intelligence services would do an investigation and present it to the political authorities, and the political authorities would say, well, based on this information, we find these to be political extremists. I mean, I don't understand why the intelligence community gets to make that decision.
I don't understand that either.
Unless it's passed down and says, I want you to determine that these people are extremists. Do you see what I mean?
Right, but again, I don't understand what extremist means. I mean, it's like, how do intelligence authorities make this determination that it's extremist? I mean, that seems like a political decision.
Yes.
To say that somebody is an extremist, not something that an intelligence agency is supposed to determine.
Well, wouldn't you think that Annalena Baerbock, when saying she doesn't care what the German electorate thinks, I mean, that's a very extreme position.
That's very extreme.
Focus beyond that. I mean, within her own words, she undermined democracy in Germany. So if you're going to disregard the democratic will of the electorate, then you're beyond the political system, and therefore you're a threat to it.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. The crumbling firewall. The leaders of Germany's mainstream parties are mindful of the fact that Adolf Hitler was initially able to rise to power at the ballot box, and that conservatives then helped normalize the Nazis by partaking in coalition governments with them, first in eastern state of Thuringia and later on a national level. This is such a corny, stupid argument. It's always trotted out about how, Hitler's, rise to power, which absolutely no relevance whatever, because he never really achieved any of this. The maximum he ever attained was 33%. And his support was already in decline. He was collapsing. The support was already collapsing by the time.
And everyone, Hitler and the Nazi Party, they did not win electorally. They did not come to power through the ballot box.
No.
Adolf Hitler was appointed chancellor. Appointed. He wasn't elected chancellor.
Right. That's right. He was appointed chancellor. And through a kind of political maneuverings, but also he was basically a very violent extremist party. They did indeed afterwards seize power, but this doesn't mean every political party that gets into power is then going to seize power. I mean, right now we're going to seize power when what's the basis of thinking that the AfD has any intention of using violence in order to seize power?
Well, and also, if you look at the memoirs of someone like Goebbels, when Hitler was appointed chancellor, it shattered their worldview. No, we want to take power by force. We don't want to win through their democracy. We don't want, this was never the plan to do that. They were absolutely shocked that they were made the legal dictator. I mean, and then that reinforced just how corrupt the system was in their minds. I mean, it reinforced it, okay? But George is absolutely right. I mean, I don't see the Alternative for Germany threatening to take power if they don't win their election. I mean, give me the evidence if you have it.
Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence at all that they're in any way advocating violence, that they've ever engaged in violence, that they're planning to outlaw other political movements or whatever? There's just no evidence for it. This is entirely, well, the Nazis did this, therefore this is what they're going to do.
The Nazis made it clear over and over again. They wanted to come to power to destroy democracy.
Right. It's in order to avoid a repeat of that history that mainstream parties now vow to maintain a Brandmauer or firewall around the AfD, refusing to include them in coalition governments, or for that matter, to cooperate with the party on passing any kind of legislation. So this is the position that so many of the mainstream parties are taking in a number of countries. I mean, obviously in France as well, which is, we will not cooperate. This is an extremist party. We will form a coalition government that deliberately excludes them. Why they think that that's
Sweden comes to mind. Sweden comes to mind as
exactly. Well. But ultimately, it's not a successful strategy because it just leads to greater and greater anger and frustration, and eventually will indeed lead to some kind of violent explosion if people's votes just basically don't count for anything. You got 34-35% of the vote, and it just doesn't count for anything. Anyway, it goes on. The leaders of the AfD, however, intend to knock down the firewall by making it impossible to avoid working with the party in small towns. If elected representatives need to cooperate with the AfD to do things as mundane as repairing roads and schools, their thinking goes, the mainstream parties will one day be forced to work with the party on more sweeping policy issues. And then it says here, due to the AfD's popularity in local politics across the East, the firewall has in many ways already fallen. Between 2019 and 2023, there were more than 120 cases of cooperation in local government between the AfD and mainstream parties, most often with the CDU. But I mean, what exactly is the examples of that cooperation include a case in Saxony where mainstream parties in one town council supported an AfD motion to forbid the use of gender-neutral language in advertising for the town's theater. In another instance, in Thuringia, mainstream parties supported an AfD motion to hold a vote on a leftist mayor's dismissal. And then we have the usual, from a local politician, the firewall at the country level no longer exists, and this will only get worse. I'm really scared that it's going to get even darker. I sometimes look for parallels with the 1930s. Wow, that is so original. I mean, I sometimes look for parallels with the 1930s. No one else has ever said that.
Yeah, but see, the problem with using that, I mean, this is up there with Munich, right? I mean, this is
yes, that's right.
It's unfortunate that so many of these historical myths are associated with Germany, but
Right.
we'll talk about that another time. But the illogic use of the it's 1932. But see, if you have democratic elections and you have democratic election outcomes,
Right.
and then you dismiss them
Right.
or diminish them, then you actually create the conditions for
Exactly.
1932.
That's
See,
right.
they don't get this. This is
That's
what
no,
the
that's
kind of
exactly
argument that people don't get. If it is 1932 and you act like
right.
1932, you're going to get 1932.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And the same thing applies when they talk like this in the United States. Oh, this is like 1932, with Trump. Trump is Hitler. We got to, therefore we have to take Trump off the ballot. We have to, prevent Trump from anyone voting for Trump. Well, yeah, then, you're basically ignoring the wishes of half the electorate. How have you in any way advanced the cause of democracy? On the contrary, you have diminished democracy, because so many people are not just going to be ignored. No, you can't just ignore a large percentage of your population and say, well, we don't care what you think because you are deplorables or stupid and whatever. That isn't going to work. But this is how, oh, well, Hitler, you just this mindless idea that this is how you end all discussion. Just, bring up Hitler.
And also, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but the way the Wehrmacht Republic was designed parliamentary in its parliament and its rules, it was inherently weak, okay? And it demonstrated that all through the 1920s, and then with the catastrophe of the rise of the Nazis. German democracy since the Second World War is a fundamentally different characterization. As a matter of fact, it's a very strong democracy, okay?
Yeah.
And then that's one of the things that the Germans in the post-war era, up until like 15 minutes ago, were
Right.
extremely proud of, okay?
Right.
And
Right.
now, because the powers that be and their incredibly poor governance,
Yeah.
driven by an ideology that just alienates people in droves,
Right.
they're willing to throw that all away. Well, why don't you change your policies?
Right.
That's what's the problem here. It's not democracy is threatened. It's poor governance.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I mean, and really, the dissatisfaction goes very deep. I mean, we touched on immigration, but there is the issue again of the foreign policy. That's a very serious issue. A lot of real dissatisfaction. Then there's the energy policy, which has really destroyed German economic competitiveness. And then, of course, there's all the various cultural issues, which again the Germans are not at all happy with, as much like everyone else. So you're really thinking in terms of and again, there's the issue of the Nord Stream, that's still kind of bubbling below the surface. Sarah Wagenknecht has said, we are going to have an inquiry into what happened with Nord Stream,
Well,
and said if the German government knew ahead of time that it was going to be destroyed, and that seems to be the official admission that they knew ahead of time, then this is really the biggest scandal in German history. So that's something still down the road as to for a kind of a reckoning in Germany.
well, George, I mean, one of the things that I think is I mean, this is almost to the point of being absurd. So you let in millions and millions of people from Afghanistan, from Libya, from Syria. I'm not going to judge the character of a whole people. That's an absurd thing to do. But what is absurd is to have this DEI, this wokeism. So you bring in these millions of people,
Right.
and we're going to say, we're all going to use the same toilet together.
Right.
Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
a man is a woman, and a woman is a man. You're expecting these people to go along with your agenda.
Yeah. No
I mean,
question.
it's pretty hard to get kind of, 10 generations of Europeans
Right.
from, Switzerland or France or Germany to go
Right.
along with that. And then
Right.
you're bringing an entirely alien culture and saying, good evening, sir. What is your sexual orientation today? I mean, you see the absurdity of all of that?
It absolutely is absurd. And that's why when we're talking about that that German politician earlier who said, "Oh, we need integration." Well, how can you have integration when you have multiculturalism, you have DEI, and you're supposed to respect everybody's culture and so on? Well, how are you going to integrate? I mean, if you're going to integrate, you say, "Hey, you have to be like us, no ands, ifs, and buts." That's what integration means. Otherwise, yeah, they're gonna say this is really, I mean, these sexual assaults. Why do these sexual assaults happen? Well, because a lot of these people come from Muslim countries. They see European women in the summer, wearing almost no clothes. They think, hey, these are basically prostitutes. We get free hand there. And this
Well,
is this is a completely different way of looking at things.
but see, to compound that, and of course, George and I abhor sexual violence. Does not even need to be said here. However, to continue my argument, I mean, if I'm just expressing myself. This is my view of the world, and I have the freedom of I have sexual freedom. You're saying that to people that are going to, well, okay, then I can rape people. I mean, this message is so convoluted. You're expecting people to conform to something. You're saying, but there is no there are no norms. There are no cultural values. They're all relative. They're all relative. My values are for me. I'm not going to impose them upon George. How can I do that? Okay. And then you get the same message from an immigrant from Afghanistan. Well, in our culture, we abuse young boys. Okay. I'm just taking your values per se and applying them in your country.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And I think that's why when they have this multiculturalism, it's supposed to be, yeah, well, basically, everyone has their own distinct moral view. They have their own cultural norms, and no one has any right to impose their own cultural norms on anyone else. So they come to a country like Germany, as I say, which is very it's a very much a European country, a contemporary European country, where the norms are very much not in accord with the norms of most of the rest of the world. I mean, where again, as I said, women just walk around, freely, and in a way that we in the West just have now take this for granted. We didn't even, wasn't even the norm 50 years ago, but now we accept it as the norm. They come here from Afghanistan, and what do they conclude? Hey, well, this is, we can just have a good time. Hence the sort of the constant the sexual assaults, which are part of now in much of Europe, where again women often just say, we feel threatened. So this is, in Germany, in Sweden, in France, women, you can go on YouTube, and how many women record little monologues in which they say, I'm afraid to go out of my house. I'm constantly afraid of assault.
Yeah, as a result, they're afraid of the rise of the far right.
Right.
I mean, for me, this is just completely absurd. I mean, if you have policies to protect your own people, you probably have better standing in your political system. But if you just don't care, and I mean, I don't know. I guess they don't understand the absurd humor. The guy wasn't there when we were supposed to.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's right. Well, that's right. That's right.
Come on.
But again, it's very interesting because, and when we read these things, I mean, just as when we talk about the UK and also about the rise of the far right and the far right, what's remarkable is the lack of any real interest in the victims. Whether it's the victims of stabbings, victims of killings, bombings.
And George, what were the names of the 3 little girls that were killed?
Exactly. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
No, that's right. The only thing matters. Oh, the far right is exploiting this. That's all that matters. All the far right. You don't care about it.
Does anybody care that those 3 little girls are not going to go to a dance class again? That they're never going to go on a date? They're never going to get married? They're never going to have children?
Right.
That their grandparents are not going to be able to be with them in the last years of their life. Nobody cares about those 3 little girls. Nobody does. Okay. But we all seem to know who the guy who was involved in it.
That's right, exactly, yeah. And the same applies. because after all, there were a number of people who were in the class, some of whom were stabbed very seriously, and will probably have life, altering injuries that they sustained as a result of the stabbing. These people in Southport, they're not going to be going to any more dance classes, and because the government isn't going to say, in future we will provide extra police for dance classes. No, there's no extra security for future dance classes.
Are those injured children going to get medical care to deal with their afflictions and injuries for the rest of their life?
You have to go back of the line in National Health Service.
Back of the line.
Yeah, exactly. National Health Service. Sorry, if there's a backlog at the NHS, so forget getting any special treatment.
George is absolutely right. What about the victims of all of this? Okay, but they want to talk about how we have to have an open society, we have to be tolerant and all that. They never talked about the victims of that. And what's even more and depressing is that they are unwilling to change their policies to address these issues. Okay, exactly. Look, multiculturalism, as it's been practiced in the West, is an utter catastrophe for basically for everybody involved, except for those that are enacting the policies that live in their palaces, okay, that never see the effects of it, okay?
Exactly, they never see the effects of it.
George and I, this far right thing, I'm just up to here. Let's just take at face value. A kind of a nominal meaning of what far right is. Okay, let's have a derisive one. Okay, well, then why are people that way? Why do people feel that way? Right. They never address that issue.
Right. No, never do. And again, then because if you think about the AFD, almost all of it is to do with migrants. I mean, that's basically the one that they've thought. Well, why is that? Why is that such an extreme position? Because when they say, hey, I don't think we should just be importing millions upon millions of people who have nothing in common with us, who have no interest in us, or by and large are just hostile to us. They like the welfare payments, but they don't like anything else about our country. Why are we doing this? Why are you replacing the German population with people from all over the world? And they're asking, and the moment you ask such questions, that already is a horrific extremism. You can't go around saying things like that.
Well, other things that you can't go around and say, because it's just, basically verboten, is that East Germany, the DDR, was a relatively successful state, okay? Now, there was the Stasi and all that. Okay, fine, I get it, okay? But, these people, for a pretty small piece of territory, pretty small population, but they ranked pretty high in industrial output, on the medals table at the Olympics. I mean, education. I mean, it's one of the things I talk with my German friends about, is that the DDR was not successful because it was communist. It was successful because it was German. Okay,
but again, it goes,
look at West Germany.
That's right, but it also goes back to something that's very important, which is that government, that Walter Ulbricht and then Erich Honecker, they protected their own people. I mean, they didn't start importing people from the rest of the world. I mean, and that's a very important thing. When you're looking at the quality of your political leaders, are you protecting the people over whom you preside, or are you just allowing them to be overwhelmed by millions upon millions of people from the rest of the world? You're basically being replaced. And that's why I think, if you look back and now in retrospect, you say, well, at least that's what, you may not have liked Walter Ulbricht, but at least he protected his people. That's a lot more than Angela Merkel and Sergeant Schultz have done.
And it was German, right. George.
Right.
It was something that they were very proud of, all right? I mean, again, kind of looking at this at 30,000 feet, you have a country for decades that was occupied, East and West. Right. And both of them, as separate entities, but of the same nation, were remarkably successful. And I think that's a heritage and a legacy that is not lost upon people, particularly in the East. I mean, I talk to people from the East. They just thought we'll just be richer. We'll just be rich. We'll just be rich. Like we'll be the same people, but we'll just be richer. No, they didn't realize that the floodgates would be opened, and the culture and society they have would be fundamentally changed. And that's what 2024 is all about in this election cycle, in Germany at least.
Yeah, no, no, I mean, I think it's the same in a number of countries. I mean, we had the European elections and we had French elections. I think they were the British elections. In all of these elections, this issue came up, and the elites, the authorities, absolutely ran the same basic plan: attack the far right, attack the extremists, and we're going to keep power to ourselves. And these strange extremists, they're going to be kept out. And that's what they did. I mean, that's what they did in Britain. That's what they did in France. That's what they did in the European elections. So, well, this is good. These are good results. You know, Ursula von der Leyen, yeah, she's back. You know, good. You know, and you know, Macron, yeah, he's back. But you still have the same anger that you haven't addressed, and is going to keep bubbling along until you begin to address what this widespread discontent is about.
Well, you know what they're really afraid of is these people that that they abhor and hate so much, they actually might be able to govern. They don't want to give them that chance.
That's right. That's right.
Right. All right, everybody. This is the Goggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to the goggle.locals.com. This is Sunday. It's the 1st of September. We'll reconvene tomorrow for our live stream.
Live stream, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Please join us. Come with all kinds of questions and comments. You know, we're always very welcome. Particularly, it's always nice when we begin and there are already a list of questions that we can address. That's always stimulating for us. So please join us. And then on Tuesday, I do the live stream solo. Now, you know, there's the issue of the tip jar. You know what the problems there are. You know, these ferocious dogs, very, very angry, taking their anger out on me. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them in the tip jar, see if we can calm them down. We're very grateful for all of your help, French. Well, wow, he's not in a good mood, not a happy camper. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, going to get, you know, more even-tempered dogs in the future, which will be quite remarkable. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.